Welcome to Decentralized Dawn, where lifelong friends Chicago and Disco navigate the ever-evolving crypto landscape. With genuine curiosity and a commitment to nuance as our North Star, we offer clear-eyed exploration. Our goal? To empower listeners with the tools and insights needed to flourish in this decentralized age.
Here we go. What a week we have had. I feel like we only had 1 week off of kind of mediocre news, and now we're back to just every time we're about to start the show, be like, what did Elon say? To who? So we have fun stuff to talk about today. Hey, everybody, I'm Chicago, and I'm on the left, and we're both lefties, so I'm happy. And on my right is Disco.
Hello, everybody. It's a little hello fuss. We're excited to be here. I'm really excited. With a little time off, really makes you want to get back into things. And as Chicago said, we're never at a want for things to cover. So I'm excited to jump in and have a fun show.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we always do the news first, but before the news, we just focus on, we start with a positive and we end with a positive. And my positive this week is actually on persistence. When you're doing stuff in life, we can get in our rhythms, we can get in our routines and kind of get stuck in those ruts, and we think about doing something or think about trying something. And, doing a podcast is always something I've wanted to do. I know Disco feels the same. I used to have a radio show in college, so did a lot of comedy in my 20s. Yes, I was funnier when I was younger, I promise. So this is exciting. So, we're doing it, and they always say in the bear, building the bear. And, it's a little cliche now, but it's true. Like, do what you love, try new stuff, and just go for it. And along those lines, my new thing is obviously this podcast, and Disco, I thank you for that. But also I am on day 498 of Duolingo learning Spanish, and my Spanish has gotten good. I took 3 years in high school and maybe 2 or 3 semesters in college. And, until you go there and, bien, E2. Wow. That was
Donde es. Okay.
Yeah. Good Donde es. So I'm at 498 days. Obviously I'm going to get to 500 on Duolingo. So I get the little golden dude who flutters around for a second, and I get my little drip of awesome. But then I think I'm going to uninstall this, and I'm going to focus on, you can't really see what this is, but it's a meditation timer. I'm going to go for, if I can do 500 days learning Spanish, and I'll get back to it. I'm just burned out, and after 500 days, I'm going to go and try and do, 365, next year, 366 days. Next year's a leap year. But I'm going to try and get to 500 days of meditating and kind of journal and see how I feel there. I always feel better when I meditate. I've done it throughout my life, but more in patches, in and out. But whenever I do it, I'm just more present for the family and the kids and calm. And it just generally feels good. Mr. Anxious can chill out.
Yeah, Mr. Scary takes a bit more of a back seat when that happens, and you'll have less Sunday scaries and things from that perspective. But I think it's a great thing, and I've been trying to work it into my life more consistently, because I do find a definite value add just in terms of being able to shut down some of the internal chatter. And I don't think it's necessarily that I have a lot more chatter than other people, but I think that we're just getting so many inputs, and things are scheduled in such a way you're just getting, constant ding, 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 ding. And it's really probably more important than ever to just take, 10, 20 minutes and just tune it off, become more of an observer of your thoughts, and then you're able to kind of look at it there. And as you said earlier, it's like, I always think that, and it's a stupid cliche, I'm sure there's a bunch of little desk plaques you can have, but I do think I do think that life begins, kind of at the comfort zone. It's like, once you start overcoming things that used to just be things that you wouldn't address, it becomes almost addictive in that. And I think that that's crucial if you really want to be a lifelong learner and develop and, kind of embrace all the new things that are happening. And I think that's part of what we're trying to do with this show as well, is, let's not just stick to a certain format or this or that. Let's try to, improve each week and kind of find our flow and do things we haven't done before. So
go ahead.
No. I was just going to say I thoroughly endorse I thoroughly endorse the movement away from the Duolingo and just do something different.
Yeah, and to what Disco said, just we're going to weave together different stories. I think, there's so many people who tell stories like, then this happened, then this happened. I think where we have the most enjoyment is just, going off the script, and just all these things are so connected and kind of a bigger fabric that's being woven in, obviously, in our whole decentralized crypto AI, what you name it, industry, but also kind of in greater humanity. And those are the patterns that we're kind of looking to identify. And I will say one last thing on meditation, like just after you meditate and if you do it for a while, you realize how much tension you're holding in certain parts of your body. We desk people are always, we're always doing our shoulders, but I think so many people have stomach issues and digestion issues, and they store so much stress in their kind of belly area and their breathing, where you breathe and stuff. And if you just breathe like rhythmically and slowly from your lower belly, it makes all the difference in the world. So
Yeah, and not to go too far off script on that, but I know that I'm the sort of person that feels, and I operate off of feelings, and I often feel through my kind of gut, like that's how I process if, whatever's going on. So if I'm stressed, it resonates there. So it's good to just trying to be, kind of mindful of that and understand it helps you to, kind of maximize your focus. And I'm all for it. I think it's a good development for sure.
Yep, I totally agree. All right, so we need some good sound effects. I think we'll start getting more of those, but to transition to things. But we're getting to the news section now. Wow, there's so much going on? It's insane. Let's start with the so Blur season 2. I think it was supposed to end like 4 months ago. It finally just ended, and I mean, what did Maki Big Brother? I think he spent 8 million losing ETH to get 2 million in rewards. And, I don't know if I'm getting those numbers exact, but that was something we could all probably predict. If you don't know exactly how the algorithm's working and, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Right. And, obviously Maki is a smart guy, a good trader, but we're playing in imaginary Blur tokens, and now we're playing in imaginary Blast tokens. And, they're getting a lot of flack for this, going to this layer 2 Blast that, is Paradigm's on board again. And they're getting a ton of flack. And I think it's kind of well-deserved. I'm in America, so I can't technically cash in my Blur tokens, right? But for a friend, let's say I hypothetically did, there was a screen on Blur's website that's like, hey, welcome to Blast, stake them here. And it showed, it kind of was misleading, because let's say you got 1,000 Blur tokens. It was like, if you start staking right now, all you have to do is hit this button. Here's your points. And it actually showed your points 1,000, 1,200. You're you could feel they were creating.
No, they were creating FOMO there with their projections.
I think what Blur has done better than anybody, and it's not even as much talked about. Yeah, they had a very simple trading platform, and OpenSea, everyone was sick of them, and obviously they moved way too slow because they were the first mover and never really adapted. But what Blur did really well, especially in these airdrop seasons, is their branding, the videos they had, and the Stranger Things 80s vibe that they did with it is, I mean, honestly, it's enjoyable to go through just to hear that retro music and the old school video game kind of pixelated Omega Man or Battlefield. Most of you people haven't even heard of the game Battlefield, but we're getting into literally a 3D game that's just lines, think almost like polygons, because obviously it was so hard just to get that going with the little RAM and processing that we had back then. But they did a great job in that. If I was advising my friend, I thank you for the tokens, Blur to ETH, and ETH waiting to stake, right? So I guess for me,
which is you sticking to a thesis and having
yeah.
some discipline. So I like that.
Yeah, and I guess the longer I'm in this space, the more the less stressful it gets, because the more you're like, I'm betting on the whole ecosystem. So Bitcoin, obviously, Ethereum staking. Like, I don't know which meme coin is gonna pop. Like, Munger just died 2 days ago, and rest in peace, Charlie Munger. But you certainly didn't make a lot of fans in crypto by calling it what do you call it, rat poison squared. Like, he had some pretty unique statements there. So Munger coin, they said it was up 31,000%, but I just checked Decrypt this morning and now it says only up 409%, which is still pretty good for a day, right? So Munger coin and the meme coins is a thing. But again, I'd rather take the long play. And, one of my validators just made another proposal. I think I'm up to 6 proposal in 3 or 4 months now. And I think it was like, a tenth of an ETH. I'm like, thank you. I will take that. I'll scoop that up like the, little hungry hippo, pull that little ETH back and that little marble back into my zone and just move on. So whether I'm active on vacation or whether, and not tuning in at all, or whether I'm standing at my computer, like I could check it or not check it. It just keeps, betting on the ecosystem.
It's kind of, it makes me think, you have all these, you're getting, it's airdrop, and then there's, airdrop hunting, and all these people that are so into that and everything. And it makes me go back and it feels like going way back, but just going back a couple weeks / months. And it's like, everything is so speculative now, based around these, oh, you're going to get dropped this or that. And to be honest, like, I remember when Friend Tech was coming up and going, and it's like, oh, you got to get in and get your tokens in here and get that going. Now it's like, I don't hear much about it, so just along the pathway, there seems to be all this, oh, you got to get in on this. And then you're in there. I don't even know what to do.
Right. Well, Friend Tech. Yeah. That one was interesting. I bought 5 of my coin because we hadn't launched the podcast yet. And I bought 5 of yours. And I'm like, as one of my other business partners always says, he's like, I'll bet on us, and that's what we always tell our clients. Like, we'll bet on us all day long. So if you want to, have us cut the development costs, and, we'll take a minority stake in your company if we believe in it, obviously, we'll bet on us. Like, yeah, we're in, because we're going to make you an awesome system. So, I don't know if there's much more to talk about that, except for that 623 million in Blast is now locked. It's just, did I say locked like a Canadian? I'm going to get Canadian citizenship soon, by the way, guys. It's just, in a week it's gone to 600 million, which is insane. I think Coinbase's base is not even close to that. In perspective, Solana's at what, 500 million, 600. Yeah. So Solana's over $1 billion now. It's gone up a lot in the last week, but it puts it into perspective how quickly people locked in here. And the craziest part about this is right now, the system's not even ready. It won't even be ready for this season 3 blast on the L2 until next spring, if they even make that deadline. All this 600 million is in a multi-sig wallet with 3 to 5 signers. You don't know who they are. I think Pac-Man is doxed, but I don't know if we know who the other 5 holders are. So it's just amazing that, I guess if you're making money on, coins that are out there like Blur, and you did a lot of trading, like if you go double down and you look at that kind of FOMO thing they had with like, look at your points that you're making right now. And, when I pulled out, they're like, no points. It was like frowny face. It's like every drip in social signal telling me, like, what you're doing is wrong, and you're staking. And you're giving this multi-sig the money. Oh, that's good. Like, look at your points ramp up. So yeah.
And like the button to stake is like enormous. It's like, click here, one click. Okay, you're in the system. Goodbye.
Yeah, you get like a
where to go.
Yeah, you get an animated trophy handed to you and stuff like that. So yeah, this time around, and what is this? My third, hopefully the start of my third or fourth bull. Like, I'd rather take more guaranteed returns. Nothing is 100% safe from attack. Even the Ethereum system. I mean, Bitcoin is obviously by far the most hardened, but even Ethereum itself is changing. But, just Ethereum as a whole, betting on that with staking to me is like, it's certainly a calculated risk, but one worth taking. And I think it still pays good dividends from 3 to 6, 7%, depending on how lucky you get with your proposal. So,
well, just to talk about that for a second. So you've mentioned multiple times, we keep going to the fact that there's a deflationary asset, right? Which is so out of step with what's happening just in the investment opportunity worldwide and everything like that. So that's super unique, but it's weird because like these, I don't know if it's FOMO influencers. I don't know the whole system behind it, but people really do understand it. How you kind of get this, these kind of like feels. I'm like, oh, I got to do this. I got to do that. But let's take a step and just look at how these things are positioned. Because I was looking through like crypto Twitter and in Instagram, and you're sitting there and they're doing these charts or these little things, like, oh, for the next run, here's my, 1,000 to 5,000x, potential coins or whatever. And here's my 5 to 10x. And the 5 to 10x are, like the Bitcoins and Ethereums and stuff like that. And that's almost shamed. Whereas if you looked at any like investment manager, if they promise 10%, they're like, wow, that's a great return.
Yeah.
And that's that's what you need to do. So people are sitting there frowning on like a 5x or a 10x return on something. So it's just so skewed that I don't know.
That's where greed takes over, I think. Right.
Yeah, because okay, well, I want to make my $100 turn into 500 million. It's like, well, yeah, you gotta, the odds of that coming through are obviously not as high as.
You know what though? Interestingly, in every market, there are folks who are really smart traders and they probably can manage that FOMO, and they just get downright lucky, getting the right NFT, getting the right coin, the right meme coin at the right time. Generally, the people who are making money in the meme coins are probably the people who got them early and distributed, 100 million to each of them. So when it blips up to from 0.0000432 to 0.00000 638, they make like 67% on a day. So I mean, I don't know. It's
a different approach, and you got to really be dialed in and playing that game and being, actively monitoring it. So it's all good for everybody. For me, I don't think I can be that active in monitoring, kind of movements and things from that perspective.
Yep. So moving on, Bankless DAO has gotten just hammered, and I empathize with these guys. Like, a lot of us got a lot of great information over the years from their knowledge, particularly in the ETH space. And,
right.
I think they are two of the smarter folks certainly in the ETH space, and they have earned their stripes by really learning and researching. If they didn't understand something, they'd learn it, and very articulately kind of crafting that message and sharing their thoughts. And they're very candid and I think real and honest thoughts over the years with their community. And I think that's why Bankless grew so much. But they're getting hammered more and more on different things. And I think when you're the biggest, people are going to go after you. And I do think, especially in crypto Twitter, a lot of it is jealousy. But there was a lot of voices, some OGs too. There's some warranted criticism, and I think they would accept some of that too. And their tune from last week, the Thanksgiving week, over the weekend to this week after Thanksgiving, has certainly changed, and they're getting less defensive and more like, all right, let's look at this for real. Because some of the biggest names in crypto and some people we respect have certainly kind of said like, whoa, like there is a difference. So the big kerfuffle this week was that Bankless LLC, or Bankless HQ, I think they call it, owned by David and RSA, is being mixed with this Bankless DAO that they did start, and I believe was it 250,000 or 250 million coins, whatever it was. It was It was a decent percentage of coins. Yeah. So, and they started it, and they started it because Bankless is a movement across the world. Right. And
Right.
I think, and that's back when DAOs were just starting, and, but I have a little insider track on this. I bought Bankless tokens that, I think I spent like 4, 5, 6 grand on those things. And you had to buy them to get in to kind of the club. And I wrote for this little element of Bankless DAO called the Rug. And there's some great people in the Rug. And, we had some really funny articles, and like it was fun to write for, and we call it chopping peanuts, making the jokes and kind of helping each other, kind of a writer's room. So it was a fun thing to be. I did a lot of comedy in my 20s, so it was a nice to combine my love for crypto and trying to learn about DAOs with comedy. But they got dinged because Bankless DAO wrote was it like a 1.7 million or 1.9 million proposal to was a Polygon or Arbitrum to
I think it was Arbitrum.
Yeah, to get tokens. And a lot of people were like, if you didn't have Bankless HQ, like this is egregious. You've got not a huge following, and so what came into question was the Bankless brand with the Bankless HQ. I got to be specific here. That's why people get so confused. Like, because their first thing, RSA and David was like, how could you confuse the two? It's like, dude, they're both the same brand, the same logo. Of course, people are going to confuse them. And you started it. You knuckleheads.
It's like having different domains. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know it was the .io or the .hq or whatever it may be. And for people that aren't in that day to day, how are you supposed to keep all this straight? And I think that I completely agree with you that it's been an incredible on-ramp for a lot of people. And I think that was really the goal, when you kind of look at their genesis story and their mission and what they were looking to accomplish. So I think that was they've done a great job of that. And then I think that they're just having a really hard time straddling this. Are we an investment group now, or are we an entertainment group? Because then you'll kind of have the disclaimer side of it. Like, hey, this is, the shows are entertainment, but we're investors doing the show. So if we get alpha from the shows or the relationships that we get as a result of the show, who's to say that we shouldn't be able to capitalize on that by making investments and supporting projects that we hear about that we think are great? So it's kind of it's very nuanced to really look at, which side of it is right or wrong. So who's to begrudge these guys for wanting to, get stake in these different programs that they think will ultimately benefit the overall mission and the overall movement of, crypto and decentralization and going bankless. But by the same token, you can't assume that everyone else is, understanding what's in your mind or in your little smaller group strategy between, whoever's running the show there. And I think they've tried to be pretty good with disclosures, relative to a lot of organizations. You can, kind of see what but even if you go to that, it's a little confusing. It's like, oh, but this is here and this is tied to there. So there's a little gray in that. And I could see how people could get a little confused and frustrated.
Yeah, I agree. And I think people are missing the main point, because I've been listening to Bankless for years. I like the guys. Like I said, I think they're really knowledgeable. I wrote for the Bankless DAO, so obviously I knew the difference between the two. But I think a lot of people who have been listening to them for a while are upset, but I don't think it's been fully articulated yet. And you kind of touched on it. You said like they started this venture fund of 35 million in earlier this year. I think it was March of 23, but they've been investing in companies, for a couple of years. And think about it. Think of the deal flow you would get when you're the most influential podcast on Ethereum. Like, you pretty much could get in on any deal you want. And I think the problem becomes is, as much as I trust what they're saying and their information, a lot of times they'll do the disclosure either at the end or maybe after an article. They'll be like, hey, by the way, they're a Bankless sponsor. By the way, I'm a consultant here. I think when you listen to something and then it's said later, it's not like your brain's like, oh, remove that from the file cabinet from this one, to more like, this one's kind of biased. So unless you go through the individual disclosures. Like, look at this. I mean, Ryan Sean Adams has 70 different angel things he's investing in. Like, think about DeFi and NFTs. He's not a big NFT guy, but just think about all the different things in the space. There's only so many categories. Like, think about how much overlap these companies have within the Ethereum and greater crypto space. Like, you're got Dune Analytics, you got all, like, pretty much all the L2s they're involved with, so like when they give information, you have to be like, you literally have to have this sheet open, and full disclosure, I've been listening to Bankless less and less as time goes on. And who knows, maybe part of it, I was in crypto way before them, but my knowledge of ETH was not nearly as good as theirs. I was more of a Bitcoin guy, and they helped me get more up to speed in ETH and really fine tune some of my perceptions and attitudes about this. And for that, I thank them. But I think where they're going now is, even though I believe they believe everything they're saying is like non-biased and spot on, you can't be an angel investor of 70 companies like RSA, advise another 6, and then, your sponsor disclosures, you've got 10 or 11 major sponsors paying, probably well over $100,000 a month for these. Like, so when you're talking about, I know we were saying early, I think Lido was a big sponsor early, and I believe now Rocket Pool is bigger. So I think they skew more conversation. I don't see them in Q4. Maybe Rocket Pool's not a sponsor anymore, but I think it was in Q3, but it will skew your conversation. And the only analogy I'll give here is, back, I used to work for an entertainment company, and in advertising, there was a year where Walmart was a big sponsor on some of the networks that I worked on, and they pulled a lot of money from us because we weren't news networks, because they were moving all their money to local news. Like, buying, and for people who don't know, buying nationally is like clicking the easy button, and buying local markets is literally going market to market. You get these spot buyers that can aggregate them, but you have to create contracts for each market and run schedule. If you're a national company, you run nationally. Like, it doesn't even make sense unless you're, if you're in more than 8 markets locally, it actually is cheaper to run nationally. So they went locally, and you scratch your head, why would they do that? The reason Walmart ran locally is because if you run in the local news, who's less likely to run stories about you? Maybe the local news. So my only point is that when you have sponsors, you build relationships, you become friends with these people, and rightfully so. We're all in an industry that we love, but when you form these friendships and you have these sponsors, like MetaMask, they're working on some new programming language. Like, to me, it's pretty non-news, but it made the cut in their podcast. Now, did it deserve to make it or not? Was it biased or was it not? I think it was, but they might be like, no, MetaMask is the biggest, software wallet out there. Of course it should be mentioned. But to me, just the fact that I have that question takes away my trust in what I'm hearing, even if that trust doesn't deserve to be taken away from them. So I guess my net is, I think they're some of the smartest guys in the room in the Ethereum and the whole crypto ecosystem, and they deserve every bit of success that they've had. But with the amount of sponsors and the amount of venture capital and the amount of looks they'd have, like, are they getting some of these sponsorships because they have the show? Of course. Are they getting like free equity for having the show? Maybe for a mention here or there. I think they say no, but I don't know. That's a hard one to trust. And that line would very easily go from a fine line to a gray one. So I'm going to still listen to them, but now I cherry pick. I don't listen to the roll up as much anymore because I just don't trust that I'm getting unbiased news. And part of the reason we started this podcast, because I wanted to do the research for myself and kind of DIY. So Love you, Bankless,
Yeah.
but now I was a kind of a super fan and everything you had I listened to, and now like, I'll cherry pick here and there, but not going to listen as much for those reasons.
Well, I think there's so much to look at, and it could be a show in and of itself, right? But even looking at the disclosure of RSA, like what's the delineation between being an advisor versus being an angel, and being an angel, that to me that implies that you're investing early stage as a angel, right? But
Right.
is there agreements where you also get set amount of equity for that, and you can
That's a
put this,
big question.
yeah, right, because then you have a rooting interest, right? So it, even on different CNBCs and stuff like that, they have to try to put the disclosure, and it's pretty clear in terms of they own this in their fund or this or that or whatever it is. But this is a step in the right direction, but I don't think it fully paints the picture and really, hits all the elements of what this stuff can mean. And to your other point that you made a lot of good ones, but one of them that stuck out to me was, what you can't unhear something. And if you hear something
Right.
from a trusted source and they're saying, and then at the end it's like, oh, and by the way, this is a disclosure, it's way out. It's way out of there.
Yeah.
And from looking at, statistics of listening and stuff like that and analysis, it's not necessarily close to even 50 or whatever percent that people are going to listen all the way through to catch that disclosure. So people hear what they want to hear when they hear it, and you can't really unhear what you hear.
That's a good point. And I just want to add one thing on top of that. We're looking at 70 angel for RSA. David's got like 30 or 35 or whatever. And then all their advisory and all their sponsors. Think about all the competition that they don't sponsors. And then you have to think about like the negative space, the no mention, so it's again, I think the way they went with, at some point they have to pick, like, are we a media company or are we an investment company? And I respect the choice they made to go for the investing side, because if you understand the business so well, there's no better way to have influence and make money than actually being an early investor in some of the ones that you can pick. But, the problem is you can't have your cake and eat it too. By going down that road, you're now going to be put in the camp of, I love A16Z. I think they've done, they're by far the best investment company and fund in the world for startups. I think it's pretty undisputed. But if they have a podcast, I'm obviously coming in like, hey, I'm going to learn something, but I'm going to take it with a grain of salt depending on what it's about and to see if they're a sponsor. And, I think now Bankless just falls in the same thing. And my choice, and everybody has a choice, instead of yelling at them, just listen to them less or cherry pick what you listen to, because they get paid on listeners and eyeballs. Stop listening or just cherry pick the shows you want and problem solved. Like, you don't yell at them. I think they're honest people who've made this space a better place by far, but just vote with your ears and your headspace.
I think, just to kind of say one more thing that sticks out to me, it just in listening to some of their recent shows, and I've seen them kind of trying to retool some of their structure and things like that. So, but I listened to something that they did earlier this week in response to, I would call it, I guess, the FUD from, the Thanksgiving weekend. And I feel like they're going through a bit of a existential crisis themselves right now, and it's like, hey, why are you guys picking on us? That really ruined our weekend, and kind of, and that side of it is like, well, because you're probably making you have naming rights to stadiums. Like, that comes with the territory of, having that next step. And I almost wonder, what the shelf life of, churning out these shows is really going to be. And maybe there's a future where they step back a little bit and focus more on some of the on the other elements of it. So it'll be fascinating to see how it plays out. And we're certainly not here to stir up any negativity on it, but just looking at it, there's a lot of sides to this issue. So it was interesting, and it certainly captivated the cryptoverse, so to speak.
Yeah, and to finish this segment, they deserve a huge salute, because they definitely onboarded and helped more and more people understand Ethereum. Our UI is not all built out, and Ethereum is not even remotely with the normies yet and the mainstream, but I think we can all feel Bitcoin, Ethereum, and some would maybe argue Solana are going there. Those guys help bring a lot of people on. So for that, I thank you. And I still listen. I'm just going to be more selective how I listen. So, this is everything we talk about here. All these threads keep weaving in and out. So we'll keep an eye on this one, but they've made a huge positive impact. And I think they deserve that to be the last thought that people have. I just think there's a conflict of interest now between where they're headed with ventures and what they report in the news.
That's fair.
Yeah. So cool. Where are we going next?
We're working through the news. Really quick. This is not the same, but it's kind of the same in a weird way. So we have a massive, powerful entrepreneur, AKA, just a creator in the terms of Elon Musk. And I'm not just talking about creating news stories, but if you really do kind of zoom out and look at the accomplishments, it's pretty remarkable. It was also pretty remarkable. He's going through this situation where, he's getting branded as anti-Semitic for, supporting a certain comment. And I don't really understand all the X's and O's of that. So, but I will say that yesterday, he was at this business event in New York where they had, like Jamie Dimons and all these people talking or whatever. And basically the big message that he gave, they directly asked him, what do you want to say to the advertisers that have, gone on strike, so to speak, to not work with your, not advertise on your platform. And he gave a big go F yourself. And it is just, I don't know, man. It's kind of exciting just watching that and to see someone just, and then basically he also kind of went directly after, the CEO of Disney, where he was like, hey, Bob, if you're in the audience, that's how I feel, and it's like, so he just doesn't seem to have that, that fear to control, what he says. And, maybe he's done enough that he's at that point. So I'm not looking at the morality of it or anything. Just the bombastic nature of being in front of a group like that and just throwing out go F yourselves to, the biggest companies and power players in the world. So it was just something kind of interesting to watch.
Yeah, it's hard not to really admire Elon, and maybe working directly for him would be tough. And I think his expectations of himself are super high. So I'm sure they're extremely high around you, but it's hard. I don't love to be like, oh, billionaires and like I don't give two craps how rich someone is, but like his attitude towards the old guard of entertainment and media, and these guys have these big platforms and they've always been able to kind of control the narrative. And I think through COVID, we've learned how much of the narrative they've been able to control. We could argue Elon probably overpaid for X by a couple factors, orders of magnitude and price. And, now it's got to make it profitable, but just such respect for him for being like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Like, the guy is a genius. I mean, Tesla was 10 years ahead of its time. Everyone's playing catch up now. SpaceX reinvented going to space. His favorite books is one of my favorite books, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is probably the most humorous. If you want a good, like, easy, almost Big Lebowski-esque philosophy on life, like, it's a great way to do it through humor. So I just the fact that he's just saying, like, you guys are idiots. Like you're trying to control everything and just like, see, I'll figure it out, whether it's through subscriptions, Twitter and X by no means is perfect right now, but we're all there. And, sometimes when we get angry, when stuff of ours gets ignored or it's so negative on there and you just feel dirty after you scroll through, especially with how nasty crypto Twitter is. And Bankless saw that firsthand. You just want to uninstall it. But at the same time, like, he's making improvements to it, and Twitter is where the crypto and decentralized where it lives. Now, I would argue Farcaster is making a very good concentrated run for that, but it's early. So Elon, from me, hats off to you, man. Like, good for you for speaking your mind.
I think that you touched on something that actually, I talked to some family members over the holiday about, which is it's part of a bigger picture thing that we've kind of touched on and addressed in some previous shows. When you were saying, the old guard, right, and having disruptors and younger people leading new generations coming in and being more belligerent, right? But to disrupt, you almost need a little belligerence. Like, that's not necessarily not what's there, but you look at like Charlie Munger, that's another story, like he passed, but you have these people, you look at the makeup of the Senate and you look at the makeup of, who's representing, and it's basically we're a representative democracy at our core. But if it's not really representing it and not representing the mood of the people, there's going to be frustration to that point. So I think that we're just at a point where there's just a lot of people that are in place and in kind of position that are not interested in giving up the keys to the car and letting you take the car out for the ride for the weekend. And there's just this building friction, and it's obviously, nature will take care of it at some point, but you just want to see a situation where you would have fresh ideas and it isn't just this, let's hold on to what we have. And I think we're seeing that even with, good gosh, who's against like the ETFs? Nobody. So why can't we just get this in place? And why can't we have some of this progression that if you put it to a popular vote, there would be, all these things would be, completely addressed and moved on from.
Or at worst for us in crypto, it'd be a non-issue. People be like, why, Elizabeth, are you going after this? It's ridiculous. And the thing about the passing of power, like, it's not even like the younger boomers, which now are probably in their late 60s or maybe early to mid 60s. It's like older boomers, and I know everyone makes fun of that generation, but it's like, I think the biggest issue we have in crypto and decentralization, everything, at some point, I'd like to think I'm going to be a learner for my whole life, but at some point you do not have or desire the capacity to keep learning. Things are happening with crypto and decentralization and cryptography and SHA-256. Like, they're happening for a reason, because we're trying to get more secure as we, fully embrace this information nanotech age, right? And these old boomers, they're regulating against things they don't even remotely understand. Like, I'd love to be at like the Democrat, well, I guess there will be no Democratic primary debate, but I'd love to be at some sort of presidential or debate. And when someone's ripping on crypto, be like, when was the last time you made a transaction? Where did you get your first crypto? I'd be like, I don't do it. I'd be like, exactly. You don't understand it. You just, whatever you read in mainstream media, a lot of it recycled half-truths or just downright lies. You've never even tried it or researched the other side of it to know how game-changing this can be for humanity. And that's what I think drives us younger generations absolutely nuts. Like, guys, go play golf, retire. Like, let's let some new ideas come in here, because these old ideas are just getting so stale. It's like we're running a digital information vibrational age with like analog people, and that's not any rip on them. They grew up analog, and digital only hit them in the latter part of their lives, like with their, with like my dad, like big finger on iPad, and getting frustrated to send an email. Like, let's pass the baton and have some smart people making smart decisions for decentralizing humanity. And that's why we're here.
Yeah. And you can look at, just the resistance to new movements or new expressions over time. And I'll go back again to music. People were trying to say that rock and roll was the devil's music, and you can remember for those of us who are of the age of Chicago and I, we can remember like the PMRC and the fights against Two Live Crew and the fights against hip hop as it came, and and in the end, the force of change wins, and it will win. But it's just like, come on, giddy up. Let's get some progress in place, and let's start seeing these things come to life.
Yeah, exactly. Because the younger generations are going to bring those things with them for sure. So much interesting stuff. This one's interesting. Coinbase. We've been talking about them a lot lately, but Coinbase Custody, so their arm where, they're custodians for a lot of these big institutional players. We just found out 9 of the 12 ETFs on the table of the SEC, we think will get approved early next year. 9 of the 12 are under Coinbase Custody. And interestingly, BitGo is not listed on any of them, although they say there is one in the works. Gemini, who we've also talked about on this show, Van Eck, it could be with them, but it sounds like nothing's official. But, at this point, with all the dominoes falling with FTX, Gemini, right. FTT is the token. I always get those confused. But, with Gemini, with like all this bad stuff, like Coinbase, and Kraken really have been the two kind of stalwarts who have good security and who have just tried to go slow and steady, even when the SEC doesn't even give them good guidance. So, hats off to Brian Armstrong and the Coinbase crew for really being the foundation for this next wave we all think's coming.
And let's also acknowledge that they had a significant jump in their stock price over the past couple of weeks. And I think that the obvious elephant in the room is CZ and Binance, kind of getting, taken out back by the Department of Justice and everything going on there. So Coinbase, rises from that as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like when others fall, you tend to do well. So, now that Coinbase has gone up above 100 again, I think I'm only down like 64% from buying the bags on the day of they went live on the New York Stock Exchange. But I guess I can't keep complaining every show about that. And you know what? And I did hold it because, of all the ones, I do believe in Coinbase. So. Not financial advice, obviously, but probably better to buy down here than it was on day one with bright eyes and a bushy tail. So Michael Saylor, at it again, buys another 593 million more in Bitcoin, bringing his total number of Bitcoin to 174,530. So, if MicroStrategy, they were a tech company and, all in on Bitcoin, I have a feeling, it got in the 20s, beginning of this year. And maybe even 19 or 18, whatever it went down to. And I'm sure behind closed doors, there might've been a couple sleepless nights there, but I feel like with him, he was still probably like a bulletproof, like it cannot fail. Like, I wonder, he probably slept like a baby still. And now, we're at 37, 38 grand. Not the price matters, but I have this sneaking suspicion, the word on the street is that BlackRock is already secretly buying Bitcoin from the miners, which, as we all know, would be the easiest way kind of on the side to be like, just whatever you got, we'll take it, because you obviously don't want to tip that price. And if you start buying off the exchanges who don't own a ton of, they don't have a ton of the supply anymore. Like, at some point that toothpaste is going to get squeezed by the steamroller, my favorite analogy. And maybe I'll come up with a second one that I like even more.
But it goes back to, in a way, it goes back to what you were saying in kind of the something good segment of the persistence and, being locked in. And I know that you've said a couple of different times, had you just stuck to holding X, Y, or Z, I believe it was like Bitcoin and ETH, you would be wealthier than now. It might not have been as fun. And I don't know if it's as fun just to go down one silo like he's doing, because the whole space is so fascinating. But, kudos to him for sticking strong, I guess. And, maybe he'll see his victory laps coming around.
Yeah, I think he might, but I really want him to get into like Bitcoin ordinals and buy an ordinal punk. I think that would be the icing on the cake, because to me that's the crown jewel collection of the ordinal space, and I would love to see guys like him just come in. Although he probably deserves his own, like, if anyone can get a legendary sat, and a legendary is the first sat of the new halvening. So this next halvening, I think that would be the fourth. So only 4 legendary sats, inscribing something specifically for him on a legendary sat, I think would probably be very well deserved. And I'm already kind of jealous that I would love to have something like my grandmother's old brownie recipe inscribed on that instead. But
the seeds have been planted. We shall see the follow-up from this.
He spent $300,000 putting his grandma's delicious brownie recipe on a sat.
It's a great recipe. So
it is. They
should be out there.
They're delicious. They're delicious. They're a little crispy on the outside, but they have that chewiness to them. So big fan.
I prefer the crispier corners, so I agree.
Exactly. Always grab the corners, and then, but crispy, at some point the crisp has to give away to the chew, and there's that yin yang balance. So
yes, there's the point of impact, and the point of impact must be subtle yet moist, and ultimately slightly chewy. It's interesting how it can all come together.
Yeah, and I'm going to say probably no more than 1/8 of an inch of crisp, because the outside, you almost want to be dissatisfied. The crisp almost is the foil or the antithesis of the chewy. You couldn't enjoy the chewy. It's like you can't enjoy the most beautiful days of life if every day was the most beautiful day of life. So
it's like getting past a bouncer at the club.
With 4 dudes, like you don't even.
We made it.
Yeah. You don't even have cute girls with you. And you're like, hey, they let me in.
I'm here. Well, it's whenever we go food, I get very excited. So we'll have to incorporate that more so.
Yeah. And last piece of the news, and we'll go short on this one, I think. But Altman is back at the helm of OpenAI, and I think we all saw it coming, and that was the word, and it seemed almost inevitable from 2 days after he got let go. The only differentiating factor now that's of note is Microsoft, which with like 49% ownership, I can't believe they didn't have a couple board seats, but now they get a board seat, and it is non-voting. So I just listened to Elon on Lex Friedman podcast, and it was just interesting, because he's one of the early guys there. It's like he put the team together, which is like, what doesn't Elon like touch? It's just incredible. But he was asking, and I guess I would ask too, like how OpenAI started, and they wanted it to be open source. Elon certainly did. How open is OpenAI now? With Microsoft, this brings them back in the race with Google. Like, God, did they need this? Obviously with the whole phone battle, I think in the Steve Ballmer days, he was like Bill Gates' like top sales guy. I would argue a horrible CEO for Microsoft. Like, it was probably the worst era of growth for them. But Microsoft fell way behind. They lost the phone game to Apple and Google, and now finally, in their search engine has always been, let's just call it for what it is, a total joke, right? And now they're catching up big time. Like I use a couple browsers depending on what client I'm working with, just so all the logins are more manageable. And like the Bing with OpenAI in there, like it's better. It's not great, but it's way better, and I use it now more. I probably still use Google more than Bing, but they've made a big comeback anyway. So how open is OpenAI?
So this is just a thought that came in, and it comes back to okay, so Elon was formative in this, and it may be interesting to look at the scope and the span of influence with like people coming up with new ideas and innovating. And we talked about it in the music show where it was like the record labels try to lock up the artist for like their peak years of creativity, and then they come back and now you see like the Chili Peppers, they're putting out new records, but they're touring off what they did before. So I almost wonder sometimes when you look at Elon's plays and we're like, oh, he's done everything. Were a lot of these kind of in place? Like, was he peaking potentially 7 to 10 years ago when he was coming up with, like putting together the pieces for OpenAI, really launching Tesla? And could we possibly be seeing kind of a hubris fall, with kind of him lashing out at everybody on the, F you to advertisers and potentially getting Twitter or X? Like if that doesn't come through, that was like he made that play 2 years ago. So I'm just wondering, are you seeing kind of the residual impact of peak brilliance, so to speak, in innovative thoughts? Could that have really kind of been engaged 10 years ago with Tesla, and all that stuff? And are we starting to see it? So just something I was thinking about with that.
That's a really good thought exercise. I mean, I just finished Oppenheimer, the book, and there is proof that mathematicians, the highest level scientists and thinkers generally peak. I think it was your upper 20s and maybe lower to mid 30s. At some point as you get older, you can still manage, you can see broad strokes of things, but you better have the people who can put the pencil to paper with, the super deep math and stuff, and you become more of the conductor. I don't, he's definitely lashing out more, but I think, and I think billionaires are eccentric people. And I think whatever eccentricities you have that are kind of suppressed and lower when you're not a billionaire, as you get richer and richer, those things accentuate, all your oddities accentuate. Cause I think your attitude is like, I'm a billionaire. Like I could fly, or I can do whatever I want, or hire anyone I want to do, or try anything I want to try. And I think that just creates these eccentricities. I do think he overpaid for X, and I think he does lash out. I do think some of it's warranted, but I also think his shelf life would probably be longer if he just nosed to the grindstone and, just kept churning stuff out. I still think he's creating cool stuff, but you make a good point. He's 52 now. That would say like in his early to mid 40s is probably when he peaked. And now we're seeing all the fruition of that. I mean, look at Apple, all of Steve Jobs, the iPhone is still, because everyone's like, why would I switch unless something totally new, like a crypto phone comes out where I'd have incentive to switch. Like there's no reason in this iterative process of the phone era that we're in to switch. So Cook is just riding those coattails, even Apple Watch, I think, was around when Steve was around. I don't know if he loved Apple Watch, but I think most of these ideas now were him, and even the VR, maybe that wasn't, but I don't know.
And you could almost argue that, Siri was a early AI thought and play, if you kind of look at how that was. So I just say, like, you look at, artists and geniuses, and there's definitely periods of peak productivity. There's an incredible documentary, I'll put it in the show notes, but there's an incredible documentary that reflected on like 7 years of David Bowie's life. And he was just spitting out. It was just like, oh my, and, God bless him. And I love, that he kept making art all the way through, but there was this peak period where it was just like, dude, he could do no wrong. And he was just pushing and pushing. And it was incredible. So when he went to Berlin for a while and things like that, it was awesome.
No, that's true. That's true. It's like I said, I saw Peter Gabriel recently, and like his last 4 or 5 albums I wasn't familiar with. Neither was pretty much everyone in the audience. And that's what we got 80% of, maybe even 90%. And, I'm glad I saw him, but unless and I'm not even a hit guy, I'm more of a B-side guy, but like give me some old B-sides, like make everyone a little more happy. So
It's probably why you had to close with Biko, because everyone knew the words to that.
yeah, it's true. Even I know the words and I'm not a lyrical guy. I was like, oh, Biko, Biko,
Biko because Biko.
Biko. Um,
All
all right.
right. Well, I think we covered the news, and this is kind of a disco deep dive, and it came about extremely organically. And I've mentioned parts of kind of this topic to Chicago in passing, but it's really interesting. I've been, this is my first time going through, a cycle, and I've really been trying to check myself on registering FOMO. And I think it can even go to the meditation side of it, just being mindful of like what's triggering my mind and understanding that there are very manipulative, well thought out forces at play that can motivate actions. And I think one of the things that I'd like to pride myself on moving forward is an ability to kind of tune out the short-term gain side of the FOMO. So if you look at TikTok or you look at Instagram, like I think I'm savvy enough at this point to, when I see a steady stream of, Lambos and, big parties in Vegas or yachts and all that, I'm like, well, they're not really pulling that off by a purchase of, this token, so you kind of get your guard up. And I think that most of the folks that are in the space and have been in the space are pretty cognizant and aware of that. But
most of the people have been in this space for a while. And the beauty of the bear too was those, like, they don't all go away, but most of all the Lambo pictures and all the super shilly stuff, not all of it, but most of it goes away. And it's such a welcome, it puts your mind more at ease.
Yeah. And so it's, that's a battle that I've been kind of working through and thinking about. But ironically enough, a lady that, was in kind of the outside of my life. So someone who's not, tight in my life or anything like that. It was a mom of a old, acquaintance or friend from growing up, friended me on Facebook, and I'm on Facebook about 10 minutes a year. So it was just kind of weird that this happened, and I accepted it and I didn't think anything of it. Then I was talking to my mom, who's definitely of the boomer generation, and she wouldn't like me to disclose age, and she's a very young spirit, et cetera, et cetera. But, but she said to me, she goes, so what am I missing out on? And my mind's like, whoa. She goes, what am I missing out on with all this crypto? All these people are making so much money. Are you making all this money off of crypto? Every time I go on my Facebook, I keep seeing all these people having, this huge amount of money from crypto. And I'm like, whoa. I mean, full disclosure, I haven't made money in crypto.
I got into the last peak, Mom. I'm still waiting for it.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it, and I'm bullish and fulfilled and happy. But no, I'm not. No, I'm not sitting on a pile of money because I'm quoting crypto. Yeah. And she's like, "Well, I keep seeing all this where people are just making so much money and buying houses and boats and cars off of just putting a little bit money into crypto." And I'm like, what the heck are you talking about? I'm like, you have FOMO. So I guess the title of this deep dive is, so now even my mom has crypto FOMO.
Which lets you know that bull is definitely heating up.
It means that there's opportunists that are getting ready to benefit from the next wave of adoption, is kind of the net of what we're seeing. And just to kind of walk through it, I started looking at the Facebook feed of this lady that reached out to me, who was a realtor. And I think that that's an important thing to think about, because if you've looked at, kind of boomer Facebook or anything like that, the realtors kind of really use that as their springboard for marketing themselves. So they're very familiar with it. They have no shame in it. Like realtors will read books by like the real, $1 million listing guys, where it's like, hey, I'm in 5 different gyms because it's more people to meet and network with. So there's no, kind of grace in terms of how they
Yeah.
look at the platform. It's an opportunistic way to look at the platform. And you just start seeing, so I went in and I looked at this lady's feed and I started seeing this bait. And I'll just kind of read a couple of them really quick for the folks that are listening without visuals. But she's saying, I'm proud to see this couple get the rewards they absolutely deserve. 577,000 crypto profits. They've been trading consistently for 4 months on our platform, and now they have a lovely BMW to show for it. Congratulations. So 4 months, $600,000 in profits. Crypto Twitter, who's doing that? Like that's a success story.
In the bear, like I'd
Yeah.
like to, in the whoever's made money in the last year and a half, like, yeah, when did this happen and how? It seems odd to me. And whenever I see pictures, like, it's, what's the right word? I want to say scammy, but it's somewhat shady when they're the material possessions. Oh, like we could never afford a BMW or whatever, and now we've got the bow on the BMW, made famous by those annoying Lexus commercials from like a decade ago. And the interior, it's brand new. It's just like, it's so tacky, but it's always, and now you got this material possession because you did so well, and it's like the worst baseline hook of all time.
And if it was one, like I could let it slide mentally, like, okay, maybe there was a one-off. But if you look at some of these other instances just on this page, there's another one. Congratulations. We're debt free, house and everything, $570,800 in crypto earnings. Like no specifics as to what was purchased or the strategy or what was going on. The next picture shows, some boats. And what's so crazy,
you gotta have the boat because,
because there's
boat lovers too, right?
Well, if you really think about it, it's a very, someone's pretty smart in terms of what they're targeting, because these are kind of the aspirations of people in that stage of life. Like, okay, well, I want to have my retirement and I've always wanted a boat, and crypto's the way to do it. So it starts feeling reverse mortgagey to me. It starts feeling very suspect that this one lady who was a realtor in like, not in like a total crypto hotspot even, you know what I mean? And she's posting these twice a day, every day. So how can one person have all of this access to this crypto knowledge to give people, $250,000 gains so that then they can purchase homes and purchase cars and purchase boats? So if you just, there's more
what
of them.
I feel like? I feel like these pictures, and we'd have to validate this, but I almost feel like these have been used in other scams. I'd love to, I don't know if Amazon recognition could do this. Google may have something where you can take a picture and actually see, but I'd be curious, like, were these really taken by this realtor, or are these pictures that have been recycled? Because if you look at that blackboard, like, I'm no designer, but, I've worked with designers forever. Like, there's nothing easier than to have two people holding up a sign. And then, even if there was something already written, you just, put a little black in there to make it blend in, and then write whatever you want in fake chalk. And that's what that looks like to me.
Yeah. And you're tapped into what I was seeing on Reddit when I was doing a little research on this. They're like, I think I've seen these pictures recycled for different scams in the past. So just to round it out, there's a couple more where now it's talking about how, we were able to make this move and we were able to, purchase another home. But you start seeing, which is a little bit more interesting. I'm like, okay, but who's taking credit for this? Like, how is this happening? And you're starting to see, look at the next picture, because that kind of starts really painting the story here.
Oh,
so now they're actually thanking a platform for their crypto profits.
Right.
And I was like, okay, so is this just this one individual doing it this way, posting these pictures and doing it kind of, something that she's cooking up or a part of, or who's behind this? And you start seeing this, due to my trading platform, they were able to achieve this. And I'm sitting there, part of me is like, well, what's that trading platform? Because I'm in, like, I wouldn't mind, turning some profits or sniffing that out. But
after all the shows we've done, like 47 hours of shows, and all we talk about is like if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. And you were literally like, wait, what is this OKX platform?
I said a small portion of me was like, wait, what is she onto? Because
That
I wouldn't
excitement
mind
sounded
making.
more than small. I'm sorry.
All right.
Gotta call you out on that one.
Well, I wouldn't mind a boat. I'm landlocked, but it'd be nice to have one in my driveway like these pictures. But anyhow, so it just kept coming. And it's not, I'm only showing and only talking about a 5% of this person's feed. So it is twice a day where people like my mom are getting fed
Yeah.
pictures of, wow, 450,000 in crypto profits, 45,000. But then you start seeing when you dig a little closer that they're specifically thanking the OKX platform. And that's important to kind of understand as we walk through this journey.
Okay.
If we go, the one thing when she launched it, you got to hit the next one. Yeah. So when we got into this, her announcement when this stream started was that she's been working on this for a while, but she's now a cryptocurrency certified Bitcoin professional.
Okay.
And so I look at this kind of as the validation, so this is whoever's putting this together, or however it's being rolled out, that's kind of the ace in the hole to say, hey, I'm certified Bitcoin professional. And to be fair, like to someone like my mom who is a realtor or deals with realtors, it's like, okay, well, what's your certification, or what have you done that makes me want to be in the position to listen to you? How do you become that authority? And you can become a certified Bitcoin professional or a certified Ethereum professional from the Cryptocurrency Certification Consortium,
C4.
which is C4, which is a nonprofit. And this is where it gets kind of nuanced and interesting, because I don't look at C4 as having any sort of active role in what we're trying to uncover, but they're getting leveraged in a way.
Yeah, like your gig, because it's probably one of the only places that allows you to get a certificate. So C4, because that's got some of the biggest OG heavy hitters in all of crypto trying to educate the world on crypto, right? I mean, this is like, if you're OG, this is like a who's who, but you're saying they're using, like, the people are getting these certificates and then they're being kind of leveraged, like, hey, no, I'm a crypto expert, which I'm sure this class is great, but it's being used for these totally other means, if you will.
Yeah. So and again, I would say, and I'd like to be very clear about this, because I want to go deeper on this. This is, just something that I uncovered and wanted to start exposing, or at least try to suss out and see. I believe there's architects behind this. I don't think that, C4 is at all involved cognizantly. And I don't have blame necessarily or fault even with the individual who's doing it, because I think that, it's easy to want to have another chapter in life. It's easy to, kind of look past certain things and not necessarily know what you're getting involved with and what you're doing. And I probably would have looked past this thing overall. But when I started having my mom be like, what the heck's going on? All these people are making millions of dollars every day. I'm like, my radar's up. And it's like, I wanted to get into like a scrum with the woman on Facebook, but then I decided I better do a little more digging and try to figure this out. So that seems to be kind of the validation that they use. And then when you go back and take the next step, you start looking at, who is this exchange? So what is OKX? And, we've done shows and looked at a lot of different things and have looked at the market share for these different exchanges. So I don't consider myself a complete, newbie on that. Like, I understand, I've used some different exchanges. I understand kind of the landscape, but I hadn't come across OKX very often, if at all. But so I was like, what is this? And then I went to the site and started looking at it. And the first thing that came up is that, hey, OKX exchange products aren't available in your region. So doing a little more looking, like, it is not available for, anyone in America and a large portion of Europe. So it is not something that my mom could go and start amassing her crypto empire, through this OKX. So it all just starts adding up to, like, I don't really understand what's going on
Hmm.
and how this is working. This is an exchange that I know nothing about. It could be extremely, legitimate. Like, I don't know enough about it at this point, but I don't understand why a American woman who's promoting people having their, putting some of their investments into crypto would be advocating for an exchange that isn't legally operating in the United States. We talked about it earlier with like Coinbase having their hands on a lot of different things and being tied into, kind of playing by the rules that aren't really rules yet, but, trying to do that in good faith. Here you have an actor, that seems to be a part of this whole deal, and
Right.
you're not able to access it in America.
Interesting. Interesting. So if you can't access it in America, how is this being promoted where people are making, it's always like 400 grand, 500 grand. So I love how it's always like, it's a ton of money, but it's never like $30 million because that doesn't feel real enough. It almost feels accessible to like people getting out of debt and paying off their house, or just like, if I just had like,
Yeah.
a couple hundred grand, I could just make my life so easy. So
Yeah. So it's aspirational to that point of kind of incremental life change, right? Like you could
right.
just kind of go up to that next step and alleviate more of your day-to-day problems. You're right. So it's in that kind of range. Um, so yeah, you go out of the site, which I did, and dug in a little bit more, and they actually do call it the broker scheme. And I just find the term scheme just that might be the most upfront
Siri,
thing in this whole
define
process.
scheme.
Yeah. Like, it's
Pretty sure scheme has 911 negative connotations and maybe one half slightly positive.
yeah, so like you can't make it up. I'm like, oh my goodness, they're really calling it, a brokered scheme. And if you look at what else is on this page, you can see that there's different elements of, the sort of broker you can be. And there's an API broker, there's an authentic broker, and then there's a non-disclosure broker. So in my little, napkin math of trying to break that down, I think that the non-disclosure broker is essentially enabling you to whitelist it and refer to it as your exchange, as opposed to you're doing it through the OKX. And in looking through the realtor's post, the new Bitcoin professional who's making people, all these deals daily, she refers to it as on my trading platform. So there's something in there that it's just riveting to me.
And I'm not going to go back to those pages, but it does it in the actual text of the tweets. I know we saw it in the pictures. Is the OKX platform mentioned by this person?
No.
It is not. So it's my platform. So that's the ND. Like, I don't think we have to guess if ND brokerage is KYC. I mean, nor do we,
Right.
nor do we care. But I assume what you're saying is this is how they Trojan horse. Obviously we're in the United States. That's how they Trojan horse in the United States, through this non-disclosure broker and probably through this simple API. So you set it up, your little storefront, and people trade with OKX as the backbone through your little mini site, if you will.
Yeah, almost. Here's a somewhat of an example. So we've talked a little bit about it, and we'll probably do more about it, but like Alto IRA, is a operation that's supposedly helping people move some of their IRA funds into crypto funds. And that, it's before, you can do it through an ETF and things like that. So,
Right.
You can take a portion of it, but they're pretty upfront that it's basically running through Coinbase, so when you get an account and you make transactions, it's going through Coinbase.
Yep.
And you get literature on, if Coinbase is delisting something and X,
Right.
Y, or Z. So you see all of that.
So it's pretty transparent. Like, hey, we were smart enough to offer these retirement products to you, but Coinbase is our backbone, which to me right away says like, oh, I know Coinbase. I try and keep as much stuff as I can in my own, hardware wallets. But for retirement, obviously you can't do that. And that opens up a whole slew of options for you with a trusted backbone.
Yeah, exactly. So now you're seeing, this being promoted to drive people towards a trading platform that isn't operational for the United States, which is where they're targeting said people. So it just is, there's a lot to it. Oh, and
Yeah.
this part, like, they legitimately have a pyramid scheme,
Allegedly.
allegedly graph on the website. Yeah, this is all allegedly. Like, I would love the answers, like if someone from
Yeah.
OKX would love to explain it to me, but they do have a graphic showing how it funnels its way up and you get different pieces of the
So,
percents.
those of you who are listening, there is literally in the shape of a pyramid, or maybe a working org chart, if you will, with a hierarchy. It basically says like two commission sharing mode, broker and user. The broker and user gets 40% commission. The broker gets 30%. The users get 10%. Or the broker sub broker user. So the broker then gets 20%, the sub broker gets 10%, and the users get 10%. So basically, the broker, the other word for that is first one in that side of the pyramid like structure thing, getting in first, and then you get the sub broker under you. Well, the sub broker could get people under them, so now you've got a sub broker. So it
Allegedly.
sounds like if you're trading crypto, these people set you up on this trading platform, you trade through them. It almost feels to me like because essential oils is not pyramidy, but there's all these different like
They call them
women's products and kitchen products. Is there a name for it?
they call them MLMs if it's more of a scam.
Multi-layer marketing. Okay.
Yeah.
So MLM. So this has a very big feel of the more people you can get in under you. And kind of back to your point, realtors now have, I try not to use them if at all possible. I don't move around much, but I like, there are some realtors who are worth their weight in gold, and I have used some and they're awesome, but some definitely aren't. But what I've noticed that realtors have done now is they, like the bigger ones, the ones you see on the billboards, they consolidate their power. They have these massive teams. So then you have to funnel under them, and they're taking a little cut of your cut. So it's a very hierarchical system. I don't know if I was a real estate person, I would not love that, but I guess if I was just starting, maybe it gives you a little salary or draw or something. But it's funny that it happened there. So you're already kind of used to that like structure where the person higher up on the food chain takes more than you. And obviously every corporation indirectly is like that. It's not a direct apples to apples one-to-one, but obviously, the sales directors are getting what all the sales managers make, and the people on the street are the people working for the sales manager, and on and on. And the president of sales gets, he gets the biggest reward. So, or he or she.
Yeah.
So
And as I was saying earlier, and you're exactly right. Realtors have been encouraged to grow their network at all costs. Like, you meet a realtor and they're going to try to follow you. Like a minute later, you'll get a request because that's like their currency. So you potentially, if we just kind of look at this thing from a bigger picture perspective, that's kind of the digging that I've done so far. And now I kind of want to get into more of like, what does this mean, or what could this mean? Somebody's smart enough to figure out that, hey, there's these people that are willing to, do what they want to do to make a deal. They're willing to promote themselves. They're willing to do this. They have said network on social media. They're already familiar with posting and how to kind of put things out there through social media. It's kind of, you can see kind of the light bulb going off for whoever made that connection of, what, they'd be pretty good to start shilling my platform and get them in. And I just don't know if we're watching something evolve right now. And maybe this sort of stuff is how, the shilling stuff is worked on the other platforms for the younger generations. To me, this just kind of jumped off the page of like, wow, this is something to look at, because you really don't want people to start getting targeted on something that they completely don't understand and get blinded by, pictures of boats and paying for their house. And and taking, their savings and putting it into something. And, I don't know, from recent experience, like sometimes it's hard to get, your ETH out or to get things out. So who knows the accessibility once people would transfer funds to a platform that's not, legally operating in the
Right.
United States. Like, where's that going to go? And how many older people really don't need that to happen to them at that stage of their life? And I just,
Yeah.
as a public good, or, I just kind of wanted to sound the bell. Like, I'm
Oh,
not
for
sure.
sure.
I'd like to go deeper into it, and I will, just out of my own curiosity. But, to have this non-disclosed brokerage model available with the click to apply, and being able to just kind of pad your resume to be able to get what you need to start representing for them, it's just it screams concern to me. And it screams, just wait till a Elizabeth Warren or a Gary Gensler starts getting tipped off to this sort of
Yeah.
thing.
It's more vector for just full attack, and rightfully so. And the SEC and whatever governing body, these are the things you should go after, because what scares me most about this is we're just probably entering this next bull run, and this system is all queued up. And maybe that's why OKX was not allowed to be in the US to begin with. Maybe rightfully so. They were like, no, we don't need your MLM here. But I think the net of what you're saying is a public good. Like, as we go, more family and friends and normies are going to enter the space. So just, when people ask questions, just look out after them, and maybe even be proactive. Like you said, you don't want to have a scrum or battle every single person, because, like, you probably won't get hurt, and it's probably not worth the energy. But certainly the people around us, we need to make them aware as they get in and learn more about crypto and make their first investments, to look out for this stuff. Because, at the very least, if you go through these and you're buying Bitcoin, Ethereum, or whatever coins they have, you're probably paying much higher commissions, and your exchange rate is probably not that great. They're probably taking on both sides. So you're doing them a service there. And like you said, getting it off this platform, if the SEC calls them in, like that money could easily be gone. So be careful.
It goes back. It taps on a lot of the themes of what we're trying to do with the show, right? And we've talked to, trying to understand how you want to position yourself, how you want to be, how decentralized you want to be. And I think that we're getting to the point of really understanding or seeing that there's kind of a merge happening, where some of the centralization is going to factor into kind of the next leg of this, and made, so we can argue from a straight decentralized, island that, Coinbase is too decentralized. But then when you start seeing some of this stuff, it's like, okay, well, I kind of understand. If I was going to advise my mom to, get into this space, I would be, along the lines of purchase, a small amount on a centralized exchange, dollar cost average, all the things we've harped on. And it's just the complete antithesis of that is, take your life savings and flip it into $700,000 in 3 weeks and buy a boat. Like, that's not what we're into. So it's incongruent, and it doesn't feel right. And I just wanted to kind of talk to some folks about it.
Yep. The net is look out for your loved ones. So, well, Disco, that was awesome. Appreciate it. And like take care of your folks out there. So the last portion of the show, what we love to do is just, we love to weave our threads together. I have a loom somewhere around here that I haven't used in a while, but we like to follow up with past shows and things as stories evolve. So where do you want to start, Disco? The super cool, awesome, fun thing, or that?
I think we'll start with the big reveal.
All right. I don't know what you're talking about. Please tell us.
Yes, perhaps we'll have to get a drum roll at some point. But I frankly use these conversations to help inform actions that kind of see and think things through, and it's kind of a sounding board for some of this stuff. And we started our first show with, an exploration of a specific NFT community. And, I was wondering, is this the one I want to enter? And, by way of background, I have, probably 50 or so NFTs that I've collected over the past couple of years. Most of them are music NFTs. Most of them are tied to, to that side of it. But I haven't really jumped into a community, and I've been really, sitting on the side watching and trying to figure out what would be, what would be a purchase and an investment that I would feel really good about making. And as I say, we've done shows about, the advent of the ordinal ecosystem. We talked about the Azuki ecosystem. We've talked, kind of on the fringes about Yuga and, some of the cool things going on there. We've really looked at, how do you want to judge where it's stored and things like that. And all that stuff going through my head, I did settle on a purchase, and I'm going to be making it a PFP and everything like that. And I'm excited to join a new community. So I don't know if we want to do a little drum roll. I guess I will, but I think that we'll try to
do
reveal.
the drum roll, and then I'll reveal. What do you think he bought, everybody? We've been talking about it a lot in the show, but
boom.
All right. And without further ado, here it is.
There he is. I'm passionate about him. For those who can't see, I'm going to ask, do mfers follow mfers anymore? And looking at this, I picked up a mfer. It's number 4533.
I like it. Pair of threes. Nice.
Yes, I like that. Hand. My kids resonate with it because they think it screams Stan from South Park with the hat.
Yeah,
so that's
I see
always
that.
Nice.
That hat is solid, and the white the hat with the contrast of the white earmuffs, like how old
headphones.
The headphones. Wow, I should almost strike that out, but I might as well just
keep it for authenticity. I like
myself. It. But I love those white headphones with the hat and the gray, the charcoal. It's strong.
Yeah, and I think you could probably roll back the tape of some of the episodes where Chicago and I danced around me seeking advice in terms of what to do, and he kept referring me to figure out what you like and what resonates with you, and that's the right way to go. But there was a kernel of a bit of an admission that if he were to be in my situation, that he may lean the MFer way, and I do feel like that was strong advice. And I looked at a bunch of things, and I'm still looking to, grow the collection and everything. But for all the things that people say when, things align with a kind of spiritual vibe and an aesthetic vibe and kind of the story vibe and everything, like I'm very excited to, tap into the MFer community and ecosystem. And I'm proud to be able to have this in my collection. And I thank these conversations for some of the guidance and getting me there.
For sure. Yeah. I think the MFR is definitely one of the most active. I love that there's no utility. They're just, I think these are timeless, and I think they are going to stand the test of time. But if I had to do it all over and I was just starting and I didn't have, a lot of ETH or Bitcoin or whatever, the first NFT I would buy, I think, almost certainly, especially for an NFT community, would be mfers. So well purchased, and I love this. This one's a classic for sure.
Yeah, awesome. So one other thing I wanted to touch on, just from circling back to other shows, is yesterday, I think it was yesterday, Spotify dropped the Wrapped for everybody, from their last year, and my kids are teenagers, and they're all excited. Like, oh, you haven't watched yours? Oh, we got to watch it together. I'm in the % of, Tyler, the Creator. Or I'm in the % of whatever. My son's like way off on some odd jazz stuff. So
I'm checking mine now while you're talking about
yeah. So he's in some really high stuff. I'm in Frank Moody. I'm like a super fan for Frank Moody, which I also have some. Oh, let's watch. I'm very curious for yours.
Wolfpack. Oh. Is this...
Can you see it?
Is this the Giz?
Yeah.
So I got
the little sandwich comes.
So wait, what's the meaning of Are the graphics just there to make you?
No, look, it'll show your percent of what you're listening to, what genres, and then it'll give you your artists, and it'll give it to you by month.
We know who this is. It gives Butterfly 3000.
This is very,
perhaps one of my favorite albums in the last couple of years.
very Chicago centric in terms of it. I like it.
More Wolfpack, and my brother got me the Wolfpack, so great album. So I'm learning about my list through looking at the screen of me.
Yes, I guess we're doing Chicago's reveal on the Wrapped right now.
This is a very obscure band that I guarantee nobody's ever heard of. Oh, it looks like a lot of Wolfpack there. All right, so I won't.
Okay. Yeah.
I won't steal any more thunder. Hopefully, they'll do it for me again. But
well,
that's pretty cool. So wait, why so much buzz on this? I honestly, next time I logged into Spotify, I guess I would have maybe tapped on it.
Well, that's my entire point. Like, all they're doing is scrubbing your data and presenting it back to you, right? So this is what you've done. I don't know from a user agreement. Yeah, it's like, well, that's probably why it's popular, right? Like, oh, look at my data,
Yeah.
And it got me thinking, like, good gosh, how cool is it going to be when we move more on chain? And, this is not that fascinating, but it really gets all over social media. Everyone's like, oh, the Wrapped is out. You got to check yours out. And people are getting so responsive. Then I'm sitting back thinking about our show where we can have, generative NFTs that are tied to tours and all this stuff. So I'm just like, let's get out of this. Like, oh, Spotify told me what I listened to. That's so phenomenal. To let's move on chain and make this stuff happen because we can do so much cooler stuff.
Yeah. If I got for Butterfly 3000, or for Wolfpack or one of these, and I was like a top listener and got like kind of even if I got a Wolfpack, it had a little gold frame around it, I'd be like, oh, mine's gold. Is that silver? I see. I believe gold's more expensive per ounce. Isn't that, sir? So that's pretty cool. And the possibilities are endless, but it's also, it's permanent, right? You get an NFT and then you just show it off in your collection. Like I said, my collection, I'm gearing towards in 5 years, hopefully, when we all have a VR thing that's hopefully open source that we can all agree on, when I bring you guys into my lounge, like the things I collect, I want to be proud of either walking people around or, it's got a little recording like, hey, this is what it means to me. I love the story behind the art as much as the art itself, because it just makes it like 3 or 4 dimensional as opposed to like 2-dimensional art.
Yeah. So the only thing, and it's just at the very end, and I don't want to give you a spoiler, but I will because we're doing a show. The last thing they do is they have the artist that you most listen to say thank you. So like my wife's was De La Soul, and at the end she had Pasta News, and we're like, thanks for supporting us, we appreciate it. But it's annoying to me because that's not customized to like, hey, Chicago, you're this, and here's an NFT. So like they're using the data, it's getting closer, but once you kind of understand the capabilities, you're like, dude, this is going to be so much better. Let's just warp speed it up. Like, let's just build this and release it and ship it and get going.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, the possibilities are endless. And these Web2 companies, like, especially for us early adopters, they're just missing out. But, more importantly, we're missing out because I want that NFT of my patterns. Now, if that NFT were like Michael Jackson or something, I'd be like, who's your number one? I'd be like, never mind. It just wasn't. It's broken.
Allegedly.
Something's broken. But no, that's cool. And that's interesting. I never even thought of the kind of that next wave because I never even paid attention to this until you told me about it.
Yeah. Well, Chicago started off the show with something good, and I'm gonna move to kind of my bookend of the something good. And normally I have something very specific, but this is a little bit more broad, and it's due to some of the things that were going on with my family over the past week or so. But I just think that it is pretty remarkable to look at how, the data technology has been impacting the medical community and how, people can survive, what are some really, before
Yeah.
even 10, 20 years ago, things where it's like, I don't know if they're going to come back from that. But, I had someone very close to me go through, some surgeries and went back for more surgeries, and, he's doing great and was released. And, I was just thinking, I don't think that, if it was 30, 40 years ago, that we'd be like, oh no, he'll be released in a couple days and going, and he'll be able to, kind of kick back or, get
Right.
right back into gear. So I just think that, we look at technology in all these different ways. And I just think it's exciting and gratifying to see the progress that has been made, and then to really think about the next level of care and innovation that's going to come to that space specifically. And it's exciting, and I give kudos to the folks that are, on the ground floor doing that work every day to make people be able to extend their lives and be able to have more fulfilling lives. So that's my something good.
Yeah, that's a great one, and it's yeah, and love to your friends and family and all those who had to go through that, because it's difficult for everybody. But yeah, it's easy to get down on the medical profession and insurance and all this stuff, but the progress that has been made, you're right, has been able to prolong lives, hopefully in a healthy way, that every decade or two it was prior unimaginable. So
Man.
that's a beautiful thought to end with. Sweet. So, do we have anything to tell our wonderful listeners? And listeners, by the way, if you have any ideas for a show, decentralization, or any news stories, or you want to come on the show and talk about something cool related to decentralization, please hit us up, and please subscribe to us, hit the like button, do all that stuff, and review and all that, because the more you do that, the more we might get seen by other folks and kind of start a new trend for a decentralized dawn. So thank you.
Yeah. And as always, this show is for entertainment purposes only. If you're going to make any investments, we encourage you to do your own research and not to get over your skis and invest more than you can afford to lose. So until next time, thank you.
Take care, everybody.